It's strange how life can change in the blink of an eye. One moment, everything feels perfect, and the next, you're left picking up the pieces of a shattered dream. But I never imagined it would be my own daughter who would be the one too. Shatter it. My name is Sophia. For most of my life, I had what I thought was the perfect family. I married Jack when I was in my 20s, and together we built a life that I thought would last forever. Our family home, a beautiful cottage nestled in the countryside, was where we spent years building memories. The house was more than just a place to live, it was a part of us, a symbol of our love, our sacrifices, and our dreams. Every brick, every corner, every room held a memory. When we first moved into the house, Jack and I were so full of excitement. We were young and optimistic, and our love for each other made everything seem possible. Jack was always the one who could see the potential in everything. He'd look at the house and say, "This is where we'll raise our children. This is where they'll have their first steps, their first words. And when we're old, we'll sit on the porch and watch our grandkids play in the yard." I believed him wholeheartedly. We had everything we needed: love, hope, and ambition. Over the years, we raised two beautiful children, Charlotte and Ben. Our lives were not always easy, but we worked hard to give them the best. I stayed home with the kids while Jack worked tirelessly to provide for us. I kept the house running, managing the chores, the meals, the school projects, the birthday parties, the late-night talks about their dreams and futures. And Jack, my rock, always made sure we had what we needed, working long hours to ensure that the house stayed a symbol of comfort and stability. As the years passed, the house became a reflection of our family's growth. We added rooms as the kids got older. Ben, always the more practical one, loved to work with his hands, and would often help Jack with little projects around the house, fixing the porch, building new bookshelves, even planting trees in the garden. Charlotte, on the other hand, was the dreamer. She loved the idea of art, of beauty. She would spend hours decorating her room, drawing pictures and imagining stories. The house, though it may have been simple to outsiders, became a canvas for their growth and our family's legacy. Charlotte and Ben's childhood was filled with laughter. I remember how the halls echoed with their voices, arguing, laughing, playing. Ben always had a protective side, especially when it came to Charlotte. He would make sure she was safe when she tried climbing the tree out back, and he would often act as the big brother when she needed advice. Charlotte, in return, always made sure Ben knew he wasn't just the responsible one. She brought joy and a sense of fun to their bond. The house felt alive with their energy. It was a home in every sense of the word. And then, as time went on, things changed. They always do. Ben left for college first, a proud moment for us. I watched as he packed his things, ready to step into the world. He was always so responsible, always so driven, and I was proud of everything he had achieved. He came back during breaks, but it wasn't the same. His life had begun to take on a different rhythm, and I could see that our home wasn't as important to him anymore. He had his own path, and I couldn't fault him for it. It's what parents want to raise their children, to be independent, to follow their dreams. But even still, I couldn't help but feel the emptiness when he wasn't around. Charlotte, though, stayed at home longer. She had always been a free spirit, more interested in following her passions than following any set path. I didn't mind that she stayed longer. It meant we had more time together. But as she entered her late 20s, things began to shift. The girl who once sat with me for hours, sharing her thoughts and dreams, started to drift away, making excuses about work, about life, about needing space. And then came Nathan. Nathan was charming. I could see how much he cared about Charlotte, and I was happy that she had found someone who seemed to adore her. At first, he seemed like a good match for her. He was smart, confident, and had a steady job. But over time, I started to notice a shift in Charlotte. She began to talk more about the future, about moving forward, about building something bigger. She started focusing more on what was practical and less on what was meaningful. It wasn't just the house she wanted to change, it was everything. I remember the first time she casually brought up the idea of selling the house. We were sitting in the living room, enjoying a cup of tea, and out of nowhere, she said, "Mum, have you ever thought about moving into something smaller? Something more modern? You don't need all this space anymore. You're getting older, and it's so much work keeping up with this house." I was stunned. "What do you mean, Charlotte? This is our home. It's been our home for years. This is where your father and I built everything, where we raised you. It's not just some house. It's our life." She waved it off like it was nothing. "I know, Mom, but things change. We change. This house is just so big for one person. You could sell it and move somewhere smaller, easier to manage. Nathan and I were thinking about it, and we both agree it would be better for you." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Did she really think I didn't understand that the house had become harder to manage? Of course, I knew that didn't mean I was ready to let go of it. Let go of the memories, the legacy, everything Jack and I had worked so hard for. I tried to explain this to Charlotte, but she didn't seem to care. The more I resisted, the more she pushed. It was as though she saw the house as a burden, something holding her back from the life she and Nathan wanted to build. It wasn't about the memories, the legacy, it was about moving forward, about convenience, about what made the most sense in her world. And that hurt more than I can express. But I still held on to hope. I thought that maybe, just maybe, it was a phase. I hoped she would come to her senses. I thought that as time passed, she would realize that this house, this home, was part of her heritage, part of what defined our family. But the more I resisted, the more determined she became. And that's when I began to sense that there was more to it than just a simple conversation about downsizing. What I didn't know was that Charlotte had already made up her mind. She wasn't just talking about it, she was planning it. And I had no idea. The heart-wrenching realization that my own daughter might betray me in the worst possible way was just around the corner. It's strange how life can feel like a steady rhythm, a pattern you come to rely on, only to have it all abruptly disrupted by a single action, a single decision made without you. That's what happened to me, my daughter, the one I had loved, with all my heart, had started something behind my back that I couldn't have anticipated. It began subtly, almost imperceptibly. After that one conversation about downsizing, I noticed a change in Charlotte's behavior. At first, I brushed it off as the usual stress that comes with being an adult. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized something was off. Charlotte stopped visiting as often. She would make excuses when I asked her to come over for dinner. "Nathan's working late," she would say, or "I've got too much on my plate, Mom." The girl who had once spent every weekend with me, talking about everything and nothing at all, was now distancing herself in ways that made my heart ache. Nathan, too, was becoming more distant. At family gatherings, he would sit quietly in the corner, barely engaging in conversation. When he did speak, it was always about work, about their plans for the future. But it wasn't the future I had envisioned for them. It was the future they had decided they wanted, and it didn't include the house I had given everything to. I noticed other signs too. Papers started appearing around the house. At first, I thought they were simply related to Charlotte's new project or some business paperwork she was handling. But when I saw that the papers had names and legal jargon on them, names I didn't recognize, terms I didn't understand, my heart sank. It felt like someone had thrown a bucket of ice-cold water over me, and the chill ran all the way through my bones. One afternoon, after Charlotte had left, I decided to go through the papers. I didn't want to invade her privacy, but something told me that I needed to know what was going on. As I sat down at the dining table, I unfolded the documents, my hands trembling slightly as I read the first few lines. They were real estate papers, contracts with a company I didn't know. The words sale, property, and transfer of ownership jumped out at me like flashing red lights. I felt dizzy. My heart started to pound in my chest. The documents were for the house. They were not just talking about selling it, they were in the process of doing it. Charlotte and Nathan had already taken the first steps without telling me. The deed of the house was in their names, and there were even papers from a real estate agent discussing the property's value and potential buyers. I couldn't believe it. My mind raced, my pulse quickened. How could Charlotte do this? How could she take something that had been mine, something that had been my husband's and mine, and not even consult me? I felt the sting of betrayal deep in my chest. I thought she loved this house. I thought she understood what it meant to me. But now I saw that she didn't care about the history, the memories, or the significance of it. I confronted Charlotte. The moment she came over the next day, she had been acting oddly, distracted, and it made my stomach turn with dread. I tried to keep my voice steady, but the hurt in my heart was spilling over. "Charlotte, what is this?" I asked, holding up the papers. "What are these? Why didn't you tell me about this?" Her reaction was everything I feared and more. At first, she looked surprised, caught off guard, but then the shock wore off, and she quickly masked it with a defensive tone. "Mum, this isn't what you think. We're just exploring options. Nathan and I thought it might be better for you to downsize. The house is too big for you now, and it's so much work. We were just trying to help." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "Help?" I repeated, my voice shaking. "This isn't helping me. This is taking my home away from me. This house is where we built our life, where your father and I raised you. How could you just sell it like it's some old thing you don't need anymore?" Charlotte's face hardened, and she crossed her arms in that defensive way she always did when she didn't want to listen. "Mom, you don't get it. You've been holding on to the past for too long. This is what's best for everyone. You can't keep clinging to this house forever. Nathan and I are building a life together, and we need to make decisions that benefit us." I felt like the ground beneath me had shifted. It was as though everything I had worked for, everything I had sacrificed, was suddenly meaningless in her eyes. She wasn't the daughter who had played in the garden, who had sat beside me in the living room as we laughed together. Now, she was a woman who seemed to have no understanding of the sacrifices that had gone into making this house a home. To her, it was just an asset, a financial decision, something to be discarded when it no longer suited her needs. And then came the moment that tore me apart. As I stood there, desperately trying to hold on to my emotions, Charlotte looked me in the eye and said something that I would never forget. "Mum, I love you, but I can't let you keep holding us back. Nathan and I are moving forward. This house is just in the way." I felt like I had been slapped in the face. How could she say that? How could she call the house in the way? It was my life, my memories, and she was willing to sell it to get rid of the past, to make way for a future. That didn't even include me. I stood there, speechless, trying to process what had just happened. How had everything turned so cold? How had my daughter become so determined to erase the past? To replace the home that had defined our family for so many years with something that was, to her, more practical, more modern, more efficient. She didn't see it, that in that moment, She had taken something precious from me, not just the house, but my sense of security, my belief in the family I had worked so hard to build. She had chosen a future with Nathan, a future that excluded me, and that hurt more than anything else. That evening, as I sat alone in the living room, staring out the window at the garden, where Charlotte and Ben had once played, I felt the weight of betrayal sink into my chest. How could I have been so blind? How could I have trusted her with my heart, with my home, and now see that she had been planning to take it all away? That wasn't the end. No, this was only the beginning of a battle I never imagined I would have to fight, a battle for my home, my memories, and my family. The house wasn't just a house. It was everything I had left, and I wasn't going to let Charlotte or anyone take it from me without a fight. The worst part? Charlotte didn't seem to care. The days following my confrontation with Charlotte felt like a blur, a whirlwind of emotions I could hardly keep up with. I wanted to believe that she would see reason, that maybe, in time, she would understand the deep hurt she had caused me. But as each day passed, it became painfully clear. Charlotte had made up her mind, and nothing I said would change it. It's one thing to lose something that's physically yours, but it's entirely another to lose the trust and love of the people you held dearest. That house wasn't just a structure, it was the foundation of everything I had known. The place where I had poured my heart, my soul, and my memories. The thought of losing it to someone I had raised, loved, and given everything to was beyond comprehension. But here we were. I could feel my grip on the situation slipping with every phone call from the lawyer, every letter that arrived at the door, each piece of legal paperwork that landed in my hands like a stone sinking into my heart. The fight to keep my home was no longer just a matter of sentimental value, it was a legal battle. A battle I had never imagined I would have to fight against my own daughter. Charlotte and Nathan had already begun to make arrangements behind my back. They had contacted a real estate agent who, unbeknownst to me, had been conducting showings of the house. Charlotte had already lined up potential buyers eager to sell as quickly as possible. All of this was happening without my knowledge or consent. Every time I thought I could catch my breath, another piece of the puzzle fell into place, showing me just how far she had gone. She wasn't just pushing me out. She was actively working to erase every part of the life I had built. I hired a lawyer, of course. The truth was, I felt helpless without professional guidance. There were legal clauses in the documents that I had never seen before. Things that didn't add up. How had they gotten control of the house so quickly? Had they manipulated something in the deed? The thought made my stomach churn. But when I reached out to Charlotte for answers, the conversation felt like an echo of our earlier one. "Mum, this is for your own good," she had said. "Nathan and I are doing what's best. We can't keep going back to the past. The house is too big, too much work. You don't need it anymore. You deserve to be free, to move on. I'm doing this for you." I could hardly believe what I was hearing. How was selling the house for me? How was it doing what was best, when it felt like everything I had ever worked for was being stripped away piece by piece? The memories in that house, Jack's laugh, the way the sunlight would pour through the windows in the morning, the kitchen table where we sat for countless dinners. How could she not understand what it meant to me? What it meant to our family? The more I tried to argue, the more Charlotte seemed to shut me out. I wasn't just fighting for the house anymore. I was fighting for the bond we once shared, for the daughter I had raised. But she wasn't the same person anymore, and I wasn't sure if I even knew her. One evening, I sat down in the living room feeling utterly alone. The house, which had once felt like a living, breathing part of me, now seemed hollow. The walls that had echoed with laughter, the rooms filled with memories, were now like cold, indifferent strangers. It was as if the house itself had already begun to let go, resigned to its fate. I thought about how Jack would have handled this how. He would have stood beside me, united, as we fought for our family. But now, I had to fight alone. Ben, my son, was no help. He had always been the more practical one, and his first instinct was to side with Charlotte. I tried to talk to him about the pain this was causing me, about how much this home meant, but his response was calm, almost detached. "Mum, I don't want to get involved," he said. "Charlotte and Nathan are just trying to do what's best. I think you should listen to them." I felt the blood drain from my face. How could he not see it? How could he not understand that his sister was taking away the very thing that had held us together? But I didn't press him further. It wasn't just the house he was abandoning, it was me. His support, his presence, had always been a source of comfort, but now it felt like he was just another person lost to me. It wasn't long before the paperwork became more serious. A letter arrived one morning, informing me that Charlotte and Nathan were moving forward with the sale. They had found a buyer, and the closing date was set for a week from now. The date loomed over me like a deadline to my grief. If I didn't act quickly, the house would be gone. And with it, so many years of memories. The last tangible link to my past would be lost forever. I couldn't let it happen. I wasn't ready to give up without a fight. I gathered all my strength and called my lawyer. We filed a legal injunction to stop the sale of the house, citing that the paperwork had been signed without my consent and that Charlotte had violated my trust by pursuing this without consulting me. But I could see it in the lawyer's face. The odds were stacked against me. Charlotte and Nathan had made sure the process was well underway. They had already lined up everything, and the buyer was anxious to close. The reality hit me hard. No matter how hard I fought, I might lose the house. I might lose everything. I sat in my lawyer's office, feeling the weight of the situation bearing down on me. I thought about the house, about all the memories tied to it. The birthdays, the holidays, the late-night conversations with Jack, the sound of Charlotte, and Ben running through the halls. It was all slipping away, and I felt powerless to stop it. Days passed and the tension in the house grew unbearable. Every time I looked at Charlotte, I saw a stranger. I saw someone who no longer cared about the things I had cherished. Every time I spoke to Nathan, I felt that same cold, calculating air. I began to realize that this wasn't just about the house. It was about control, about power. Charlotte had gotten wrapped up in a vision of success that didn't involve me or our family's legacy. She was chasing something, and it didn't matter who she hurt along the way. But I refused to be a bystander in my own life. As the date of the sale drew nearer, I made the difficult decision to fight for my home, for my memories, and for the love I had once shared with Charlotte. I wasn't going to let them take everything without giving me a chance to say goodbye. The final moment came when I received a call from the real estate agent. They were set to finalize the deal in 2 days, and the buyer was eager to close. I took a deep breath and made my decision. I was going to confront Charlotte one last time. I was going to fight for the family I had loved, for the house that had been the center of our lives. This wasn't just about a house. It was about my heart, my history, and my family. And no matter how hard Charlotte tried to push me aside, I wasn't going to give up without a fight. I would win this battle, or at least, I would make sure. They knew the cost of taking everything from me. Thank you for joining me on this journey. If you've ever fought for something or someone you love, you know how painful and complex it can be. Sometimes, the ones we love hurt us the most, but we must stand firm and fight for what's ours. If you've been through something similar, share your story with me, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to hear more about how we can heal and rebuild, no matter what we face.